Our next speaker, 225. The title of her speech, Black to the Future.
Back in elementary school, I was quite the tomboy. I mean, man, I was a bro! On the playground, my friends and I imagined a universe where Marvel and DC combined! Heck yeah, it was crazy. And in this universe, we could be whoever we wanted to be. My friends were Batman, Spider-Man, Superman. Boy, please. I was the astounding, the all-powerful Falcon. You know the sidekick to Captain America? The black one. You see, as I imagined fighting against the world's greatest supervillains, I always imagined myself as the sidekick, never the hero. Because in most of the cartoons and movies I watched as a kid, black heroes simply didn't exist. Yet. Enter Afrofuturism. Ebony magazine defines Afrofuturism as an American cultural catchphrase used to describe the world of tomorrow in today's music, art, politics, academics, and even literature. So today, let's take a look at Afrofuturism by first exploring its heroic origins, second, unmasking examples of it in present day, and finally, projecting black to the future as we look at its impact today and its importance towards a greater hope. Afrofuturism is introducing the world to a new superhero, one with sharp cheekbones, broader shoulders, coarser hair, and last but not least, beautiful dark skin. The newest intergalactic masters and saviors of the universe are black. Elizabeth Reich, an Afro-American studies professor, states that Afrofuturism is bringing form in the present to black visions for the future, visions that often repair an unredressed past. The events of slavery, lynching, and persecution are used to showcase the strength of African Americans and all they have endured. The theory goes, if African Americans were able to survive such dehumanizing events in the past, they would undoubtedly have a place to hold in the future. Now, the term itself, Afrofuturism, was coined by author Mark Derry, ironically a white guy. However, the concept itself dates as far back as the 1850s. Martin Delaney, a highly acclaimed African-American activist of that time, wrote several fictional stories of successful slave revolts, plantation escapes, and the overall rebuilding of a free life. It was his novels that first inspired other African-American writers to even imagine a more positive future for their black characters. Now, in the 1960s, Marvel Comics introduced the world to a new superhero, Black Panther, the first black hero established in mainstream comic books. My main man, T'Challa, was a king, possessing martial arts skills unknown to mankind and the ruler of Wakanda, a technologically advanced African nation, and the only one to have never been colonized. His creators, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, sought to dispel the African stereotype of poverty and uncivilized savagery by giving Marvel Universe a character that was perhaps more cunning and intelligent than the long line of white heroes that preceded him. The story of Black Panther was created during the Civil Rights Movement, giving African Americans a public outlet to see themselves represented in a positive light. So, Now that we've examined the history of Afrofuturism, let's take a look at where we can find it in present day. According to a Time magazine article published in April of this year, Afrofuturism is playing a pivotal role in shaping African American culture. Here we have the image of the oil-based canvas of the masterpiece Mind of My Mind, one of many, displayed in the New York Public Library just after Trayvon Martin's shooting in 2012. The exhibit was called Unveiling Visions, the Alchemy of Black Imagination. Its purpose was to critique present-day dilemmas that African Americans face. Another artist, using Afrofuturistic ideals to advocate change and protest mistreatment, is none other than Queen Bee. Through music, Beyoncé proudly protests police brutality and gun violence, all while establishing and embracing her pride in her African American heritage. Now, even more recently, Marvel Comics introduced the world to an even newer superhero, Ironheart, from the Invincible Iron Man comic series. Born a super genius and raised in the projects of Chicago, Riri Williams is a 15-year-old college student at MIT, and her creation directly combats bias towards students of color. You see, according to an article from Education Post published this spring, too many teachers in today's society still hold lower expectations of their students of color, which has been found to negatively affect their academic success. This is especially concerning in a nation where, according to a study reported by the National Center of Education this May, 1 in every 4 African American students will not graduate high school. Brian Bendis, one of 3 Ironheart creators, states that Riri is on the front lines of Marvel's push to diversify its comic books. Imagine that. A character taking over as one of the world's most recognizable superheroes is a young, strong, Black woman. Now that we've explored the origins of Afrofuturism and taken a look at where we can find it in present day, let's look at the social significance of where we will be seeing it in the future. Studies conducted by National Geographic in 2013 project that this is what the faces of average Americans would look like in the year 2050. Their findings show that America is looking a lot less white as interracial marriages become more and more common. In the span of less than 40 years, the United States of America will be predominantly populated by people of color. Clearly, if our future is destined to be of color, it is important that we see people of color represented in our politics, our academics, and our arts. In a world that constantly works to erase us, Afrofuturism is important. Marvel has clearly embraced this, coming full circle with their first Black comic book hero, becoming their first Black cinematic hero. According to a Forbes magazine article, Black Panther sailed past Titanic this May to become one of the highest grossing films of all time. And with the success of the movie, Disney was inspired to donate over $1 million to Black students studying STEM, in a nod to one of the movie's most prominent themes of technology. When interviewing the Black Panther cast, noted author and political commentator Ta-Nehisi Coates states that the film was an incredible achievement and could very well be declared the Star Wars for Black people. He goes on to say that the film brought him something he never knew he needed, satisfying a hunger for a myth, a fantasy that addressed his feelings of both separation and connection to his roots in both Africa and America. We all know that historically African Americans have been underrepresented in our politics, but overrepresented in our prisons. And Afrofuturism is working to shed light on those disparities. To the little black boy whose parents sit him down for a talk that no other children receive, telling him that in this life, he will be treated differently simply because of the color of his skin. To 7-year-old me, a little girl growing up in suburbia, but a little girl so ashamed of the color of her skin that she would press her eyes shut and clasp her hands tightly to try and pray the black away. Afrofuturism is important. Writer Jamal Smith from Time magazine states that those of us who are not white have considerably more trouble finding representation of ourselves in the mass media that surrounds our lives. Relating to characters on screen is necessary, not merely for us to feel seen and understood, but for others. Others who need to see and understand us. As Afrofuturism continues to defy and challenge systematic stereotyping and attack institutionalized discrimination, we enter a world that's boundless, opening our minds to new possibilities and new horizons.